this letter. Days passing, days yet to come, and the message of freedom. The message of freedom.
Hey, Matt, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How about you?
Well, no rain today, which was good. not more than a sprinkle. Grass is growing good. My barley's coming into head. If you know what that means, it means you can start seeing the kernels popping out.
Is this the time of year to do that, or is it a little early?
It depends on which type of barley you bought.
Okay.
There's some barley that's made to come in early, a little bit earlier, so you can try to get double crop corn or soybeans in, and I think I got a mid-range one, so other people's are already, actually one farmer already chopped some of his for his dairy cattle, and because as soon as it starts coming into head, that's when you chop it, so it's the highest forage value. Today, I think we will have a couple calls, one at about quarter after and then one at the bottom of the hour. One's going to talk about a residency issue in the Larry Kump district, currently held by Larry Kump. And then we're going to have a call from, and that call's going to come from Howard Stone, who's a plaintiff in I guess you all reported to the residency case today. And then the second half of the show, we'll have Tom Bibby on, current delegate for the district over that John Irvington used to serve. I don't want to misspeak. I think it's the 62nd, if I remember correctly. And I believe the district that Kump currently serves is the 59th. And we'll take, if we have time, we'll take other calls, and that number is 304-263-6540. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about campaign finance, something really boring to most people, but very intriguing to me because it's, and specifically in my election, because it's, I don't know if have you had any news reports on that yet for the latest campaign finance?
Not the latest, no.
All right, so currently, I'll just talk about it real quick. So Jim Justice has now raised, well, let me put it this way. He's got on hand $68,000, unpaid bills $112,000. Can you imagine that? Jim Justice is always behind on paying his bills. He's loaned his campaign over $900,000. Total expenditures to date, $1.43 million. Total contributions to date, $576,000 and change. But it was interesting to note, you ever heard of a guy named Nick Rahal?
Yes.
Do you know why that name sounds familiar?
Off the top of my head, no.
He was a congressman in the 3rd Congressional District
There you
for
go.
about 30 years. So Nick Rahal has donated $2,000 to Jim Justice. And of course, Nick Rahal was a former Democratic congressman in the Southern District there. There's some other interesting campaign contributions of note. It's clear that people are trying to buy influence, which is not unheard of in politics. And most of his campaign contributions are very large. In other words, his small campaign contributions are only a page and a half. When I say small, that's below 250. Jumping to Woody Thrasher. Woody Thrasher has now spent in excess of $3 million. He's loaned his campaign to date $2.6 million. He's raised $435,000. And again, it's always interesting. Now he's got looks like almost 2 pages of small dollar contributions, but a lot of big dollar contributions also. And by the way, he raised this period $59,000, and to date he's raised. To date, his total contributions today is $435,000. But he's got an interesting. One thing that I noticed was on his campaign contributions was a guy named Sam Cann donated to him. And Sam Cann is a former state senator, Democrat state senator. And so I don't know if I've gotten any Democrat donations or not, but if they were definitely not big name Democrats. Now I'll just pull up mine. I've raised a total of almost $100,000. I've spent about $125,000. Of course, I've loaned my campaign some money, but not near. There are fewer zeros on my campaign or my loans than the other fellas. But I've got 3 pages of small dollar donations, and then a bunch of people that have actually jumped into the contributions of more than $250. But when I say jumped into that list, these are people that have been donating monthly to me. Some as little as $5 or $10 a month. One fellow that's been donating since day one lives right over here off Eagle School Road. He's been doing $60 a month, and Caleb's his name. I appreciate that greatly. And so I'm just throwing that out there, that you'll see a lot more of these guys' ads on TV, especially because TV is pretty costly to advertise on. Most of my stuff I'm working on social media, and we're obviously doing some radio here at the station and through Cable 10. We're going to talk about, I've got some other, of course I said who's going to call in, and I'm also going to touch base on, I've got an article here for your listener, or for the people watching out there, touching base on what we talked about a little bit yesterday, where the food supply could be in jeopardy if we stay shut down too long. This is actually from the former Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. But after we have these calls, we'll talk about that at the end of the show. I don't even know if you call this a show.
It's your own personal town hall.
Well, I guess that's true. Just not getting a lot of as many questions as maybe I'd like. I got a question for you, though.
Uh-oh.
I read the article about the fellow that was hired at Spring. You know, this is kind of dear to my heart because I was a football player. They got a pretty good find with the new coach, it looks like.
It certainly looks that way. We had a chance to talk with him. It is Josh Sims. He's from Magnolia High School, where he played, went back, was an assistant coach, then a head coach there for 2 years, won a state championship in 2015 at Magnolia, then made his way to Morgantown, stepped up to the AAA level, said he had some family in that Morgantown area that helped to make that decision, and then when this opportunity came open, felt like it was one he wanted to go after. You know, the good competition in football here in the Panhandle, Martinsburg as strong as they have been, Musselman as strong as they have been, you know, Hedgesville a playoff contender up until last year, and so you know, you look at it and say they've got things going in the right direction out at Spring Mills. Well,
yeah, you couldn't. I mean, we're one of the few growing areas in the state. It's a brand new school, relatively speaking. Incredible facility, because in my understanding from talking to some people out that way, that because when they built that school was literally during the last downturn, economic downturn, they actually got more bang for their buck. So they got really, really great athletic facilities built there. And, of course, they got you know who the athletic director is over there, right?
Dan Comer at Spring Mills.
And he knows how to run a sports program. I mean, I was at Hedgesville coaching the pole vaulters. I think it was 1995 when they won the state championship in track. Okay. And they didn't have a track.
Right.
Which was, like, unheard of. Of course, now Hedgesville has a track, too, which is just great, too. I think the only school in Berkeley County that doesn't have a regular all-surface track now is Musselman. Is that correct? They still have the Cinders, if you want to call it that. Okay. But I don't think they have track meets there anymore. But so when we get back, we'll take a call from Howard. We'll discuss, because I haven't really looked at this case much since 2018. It's a similar issue. And we'll take his call, and we'll go from there.
The Chinese coronavirus is hurting our economy and our state. It's the thanks we get after China stole our jobs and ripped off our patents. And that's not all. Thrasher and Justice are pushing a deal giving China an $84 billion stake in West Virginia's valuable energy resources. More China scams we don't need. Woody Thrasher and Jim Justice, two China sellouts. First, Justice and Thrasher pushed the biggest tax hike ever. Then Thrasher and Justice endorsed bringing refugees to West Virginia. And now an $84 billion sellout to China. Stop them. Mike Folk for governor, the conservative champion to put West Virginia first.
I'm Mike Folk. Justice and Thrasher's $84 billion sellout to China is even worse than their taxes and open border policies. West Virginia needs a governor who will put West Virginia first. I'm Mike Folk, Republican for governor. That's why I'm running.
Mike Folk for governor, the conservative champion to put West Virginia first. Paid for by Folk for Governor.
If you hang the WVU Medicine sign, certainly has helped take us to another level.
Evolving what we try to do as physicians and as a health system and organization is the mission of WVU Medicine, and it's an exciting mission to be a part of.
With the knowledge and the years of practice that they've put into this institution, they know a lot. They can help you, and they've helped me a lot.
Having people treated locally enhances their overall care.
When will I be able to retire? How do I make the most of the money I have? How do I leave a lasting legacy to my loved ones? I'm Philip McCoy, financial advisor with the Mirius Group, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services Incorporated. Call us today at 304-263-4343 to help you make the most of your financial future. Our office is located at 1270 Winchester Avenue, Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Ameriprise Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA and SIPC.
Howdy, cowpokes. Do your business cards look like they were designed by a code roper? Well, this cowboy knows the advantage of dealing with folks the old-fashioned way. When you order printed material on the internet, you're stuck with what you get. But when you need printed material to look just right, you want to deal with folks you know. And that's what you'll find at Panhandle Printing and Design. Local folks that have been delivering results for years. They can help with everything from design to production of stationery envelopes, business cards, invitations, vinyl signs, banners, vehicle wraps, and a lot more. They can answer all your printing questions, and you can call them on the phone or hop on your horse and go see them, because they're your one-stop printing shop where they have something for everyone. Panhandle Printing and Design at 124 North Maple Avenue in Martinsburg. Call 304-267-7400. You can even find them online, too, if you want to. If you need printed materials, don't deal with some city slicker you'll never meet. Trust the folks at Panhandle Printing and Design.
You always pick the best music. I think we got, what'd you say, Rodney?
Rodney on the line.
And I might know Rodney. If it's Rodney, I think it is.
Yes, it is.
How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Hey, I got a question for you with the budget being the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is that the same question you were asking that you sent me a message on?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, as far as road work, Rodney, I don't know, because they haven't released. Most of your road work is not general revenue money. It's derived from your gas taxes, your DMV fees, and things like that. And I haven't seen any new current numbers on that. However, I'm sure you're aware that since we have this stay-at-home order and people are not working and unemployment's up drastically, it would be logical to believe that people are driving less, which means we're getting less revenue from the gas taxes, which means there will be less money available to keep working on the roads. So my guess, and at the same time, we still have bonds that have to be paid. So the bonds are going to be paid first before money gets put into the roads. Does that make sense?
I understand.
So the answer is...
Do you think there'll be layoffs on the state road?
Well, the governor has said today that he doesn't anticipate any layoffs. First of all, one of the primary functions of our state government is fixing the roads, keeping the roads up to snuff, and of course others are public education and things like that. But I would think that one of the last places that would be touched would be roads, education, things like that. There's a lot of other places with fat, what I would term as fat in the budget. In other words, I don't know if you listened to the show the other day, but one of the first places I'd go after to make up any budget shortfall would be reappropriated money in the various agencies that are under the general revenue budget, which right now, the last numbers I saw, I'm trying to get the latest numbers as of April 1st for how much money is left in the various agencies, which does not, by the way, it does not include, this is general revenue stuff. The roads are in a whole special revenue category. It's not part of the general revenue budget. So there are other places that I know total between $300 and $400 million in reappropriated money. And really the shortfall that they're expecting is $200 million. The other $300 million of that shortfall is due to them moving the tax filing deadline. And that could be dealt with in various other ways. And of course, it appears from what I heard today, the snippets I've heard of the governors being asked questions about where they're going to get the money. Seems to me he's putting all of his eggs in one basket, which is hoping the federal government or the federal government will allow them to use the money that the states are getting through the CARES Act to backfill budget shortfalls. I don't know if the bill actually specifically says that or not. I don't think it does. Obviously, if it did say that, they wouldn't be asking for permission. So I'm hopeful that they won't, because really you're getting, as you well know, I think you work for the state road, we're actually getting into the time right now when the roads have to be, this is the season to work on roads.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking my call.
Hey, obviously you're calling in, so are they sending you all home not to work right now?
No, we're working.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate the call, and keep hard at it. And good luck and be safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Guess I should have watched.
Now you have another caller on the line.
Is this Howard?
This is Howard.
This is Howard. Mike, how are you?
Fair to middling, as some people will say. I'd be a lot. I think everybody in West Virginia would be doing a lot better if we just open up the state for business. But that's just my personal opinion.
That's very true. However, I think this little show of yours is really illustrating how you'll work outside of the box to get the job done and be innovative in your approach. So congratulations on this thought. I think it's good, and it's being shared.
Well, I hope it's being shared because hey, we're trying to get some information out there, more so than you can do in a 10-minute interview or doing a social media post. Of course, I called you before the show to see if you would, because I had seen I guess it was on Morgan County, USA, somebody sent me, and I guess
yes.
R&R actually reported on it today that you filed a case again on residency, and I believe it's the 59th District, the opponent of Larry Kump, Ken Reed.
That's correct.
You want to tell us about where it stands and what the issue is? And of course, I kind of already know the issue, but there probably have been a few things that are different from 2 years ago. And, and I'll just basically open the floor for you to tell me what the status is, because I have not seen the case. I have not seen the petition.
Right. So 2 years ago, it was just two of us that were seeking ways in which to work through this falsehood, if you will, because that's how it's viewed by myself anyway, as a falsehood. And it was after the lawsuit was filed 2 years ago that I got to know Larry Kump, and I followed and been friends with Larry Kump for the last 2 years, and he's a really good man. To have this come up again, I know the house where Mr. Reed claims that he resides, and it's funny, when you drive by it, it's not well kept. The lawn oftentimes needs to be mowed. We also know people that are in that area that say they never see him. One person who said that, there's packages that sat on the front doorstep for over 3 days from Amazon. So we're pretty confident and pretty sure that he does not reside there, though we know beyond a shadow of a doubt he does own that property. This whole thing this time around is really more about a group of citizens that are very concerned about this whole activity. My name is on there for name recognition, and because of the last lawsuit that was filed, and it was agreed that I would be the plaintiff on this one. So we're in the process right now of trying to get things into Charleston. And as you know, Mike, the last time it was claimed that there was not enough time to hear the case. Fortunately, this time the primary is delayed until June 9th, so there seems to be plenty of time to have this heard and different judge, et cetera, so we'll see what comes out of it. But that's really what it's all about. It's about having a person that is representing the 59th that is genuine, that is honest, that has a transparency, very much of a transparency, and I, for one, believe Larry Kump is that person. I think the other part about Mr. Reed that kind of bothers me is when I first got to know him, I was interacting with him on social media. And when Tally filed the last time, I went to him and I asked him, I said, so where do you really live? And I was immediately blocked and have been blocked ever since, which is fine. But, there's something, as a commissioner in the county, it'd be nice to participate in some of those things, to hear what's going on, but he's made a choice that I should not be heard. And if we got a person that says a commissioner doesn't want to let their constituents hear what's going on and their opinions on things and interact on those, why do I want that person to represent me down in Charleston if he's not going to listen to me? So,
a quick question: Does he use that page, his Facebook page, for commission stuff?
He does. Well, actually, he has two different Facebook pages. One of them he used for personal. There's another one that he uses also for county types activity. I have access to his personal one, but not the county one.
You're blocked on the county one?
Yes.
And he's using his official campaign, or not campaign, but commission page?
Yes.
That's a little problematic too.
It is.
There was actually a court case on that. I don't know if it was in West Virginia, but there was a court case on that basically said you couldn't do it. Quick question: where was the suit? What's the word I want to use? Where was he served?
He was served over in his house on Lunar Lane.
So the one that's in the 58th, the one that's in the 58th?
Correct.
Was he served, or was it one of his children?
I believe it was one of his children that was actually served on that one.
Okay, just like last time. Only this time it was Dad's not home, not that Mom's not home.
Right. Exactly.
Well, here's a question for you. How many places have you found out that he was registered to vote in over the last, say, 6-8 years?
Well, let's see. The ones that I can recall right away is one was in Charleston, one was in 59th, one was in 58th. Those are the places that I'm aware of. I've heard rumor, but I haven't seen the evidence of it, that there was a time over, I think it was in 60, I think it was, where he was filed at one time.
Yeah, I think one time it was Winchester Avenue extended, basically going over towards Inwood. So,
right.
Now, did you listen to his interview earlier after he filed for running for office here on WRNR?
I did.
Do you remember what, I think it was Dave Welch said, you own property everywhere, you could just about run everywhere. And his answer was something to the effect, yeah, I guess I could just about run anywhere.
Well, there's a problem with that, because if you go in and you take a look at the rules, even though it's not as clear as it should be, if you look at the eligibility to be a candidate, it says that you reside in the district or in the area that you're running.
Yeah, and it's 1 year prior to the general election.
Right. So last fall, I happened to go to the Eastern Panhandle Business Association meeting. Mac Warner was there, and I pointedly went and asked him, so how do you define a residence? And his answer was, a residence is where you sleep at night. And from the best we can tell, there's probably a timer on a light in a window in the living room, but from the best we can tell, he doesn't sleep there.
Well, of course, I think you probably know that my in-laws live literally about a quarter of a mile from there, and
correct.
And I'm familiar with the affidavits that were obtained in the last 2018, and the lady that lived right next door said that at that point in time she had never even seen Tally ever at the house. So
right.
If he is living there, it appears. Well, of course, I think he bought that house now. The one right next door, I think he bought that house. I might be wrong, but I know she had it for sale, and I know he did buy the old, what was it called, the restaurant right there. He bought that too.
He bought the restaurant, and before, I think it was 2.5 years ago, he bought that house over on Martinsburg Road.
Oh, you're talking about the one on Route 45 going towards Shepherdstown?
No, I'm talking about the one going towards Martinsburg from Berkeley Springs.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, he bought it a few years ago, and it was initially taxed as an investment property.
What keyed me on this on that whole thing 2 years ago is my wife and I had gone to a tag sale at that house. The couple was selling off all their stuff and were moving into a nursing home, and they had one of the daughters had mentioned, yes, the house is being sold. Didn't say who, but the house was being sold. Well, that was inconsequential. And then when that came about, considering where I thought I knew where he lived, I went and I looked it up on MapQuest and got the visual of the front of the house, and sure enough, that's the house that we went to for the tag sale. So, you really just can't make this stuff up. It's almost like he feels that we're just too stupid to figure it out.
Well, what's the if I remember reading correctly, is it the 21st that there's a hearing?
Yes.
And is that a hearing? Is that a hearing to show why he thinks he should be able to run, or is that where he's got in other words, y'all laid out a pretty good case if it's similar to the one in 2018, which the judge refused to rule on because it was too close to the election.
So many similarities. One of the people of our group really dug in and did a lot more research, and has gone to the Secretary of State's office, has done a few other things to raise it. So I think this time around we got a little bit better information than we had the last time. No fault of any of us. It's just how it shook out.
Well, we had some pretty good affidavits last time.
Yes, we did. This time here is the hearing on the 21st is for Reed and the Secretary of State to show cause why it shouldn't be heard in court.
Okay. So has Secretary of State has not taken a position, or they're trying to defend Reed? Or you don't know yet?
I don't think they're trying to defend Reed as much as they're trying to stay away from it.
Okay. Well, I had one other question. It slipped my mind. I know what it was. Now, just so everybody knows out there, because this is important. The last time it was originally filed with the Supreme Court, correct? And they kicked it back to the circuit court in Kanawha County to, quote, develop a proper record.
Right.
Does that sound right to you?
That's correct.
And then the circuit judge at that time, whose name happens to be Judge Tabbitt, Joanna Tabbitt, who happens to be running for the West Virginia Supreme Court now, a second time, didn't do her job. Is that a fair statement?
Well, she didn't do the job that we hoped she would, or at least have the court case heard. And what she said in court is, well, it's just too close to the election to hear the case.
But the Supreme Court told her to develop. The reason they put it back to her was to develop a proper record. They didn't want to. The Supreme Court didn't want to rule on it until they had a record of the facts, and she never even let the facts be heard.
No, she didn't.
And so she didn't do her job.
Correct.
That's my opinion, and that's why I will never vote for her. And I urge everybody out there, and it's not normal for some gubernatorial candidate to take a position on something like this, but I cannot stand people that are asked to be, it's their responsibility in this case to develop a proper record, and instead she just basically punts, and to use a football analogy. So, well, I'm going to let you go unless you got anything else to say, and we'll take a break, Matt, and we'll come back, and I bet you Tom Bibby's just called in.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave.
West Virginia has enough problems without subsidizing refugees from terrorist nations and gang-infested countries. But that's what Governor Jim Justice endorsed. And Woody Thrasher supports Justice's plan. Makes sense. Both supported Hillary Clinton for president. Only one governor candidate says no to open borders and bringing refugees to West Virginia. Mike Folk. Mike Folk for governor. Defending our conservative values. Taking care of our own. Mike Folk for governor. Fighting for us.
Orsini's, not just an appliance store anymore. They're your one-stop resource for all home needs, whether it's custom kitchen design, countertops, or cabinets, or check out their new sleep studio with Tempur-Pedic, Sealy, and Stearns & Foster. For all of your outdoor living needs, Orsini's has Gladiator Garage Works, Traeger grills, barbecue accessories, barbecue rubs and sauces, and every flavor wood pellets. Visit their brand new 8,200 square foot showroom at 360 Hack Wilson Way, 304-267-7251, Orsinis.com.
To prepare for what's next or to plan ahead. We're here. Brown Funeral Home, a legacy of service since 1880.
Bold and savory. Why are you always talking about me? Actually, Rod Hawker Dog Hawker, I was talking about the soup sale at Johnny's. Sweet! Now with new varieties and your reliable all-time favorites, it's soup sale time at Johnny's. Hearty and flavorful, choose from new varieties like Pilgrim's Corn Chowder, stuffed green pepper soup, lumberjack vegetable, and Phillips cream of crab. And don't forget rip-roaring crab and corn, steak and ale chowder, French onion, Maryland crab, and chicken noodle. The perfect comfort food. Johnny soups are still quick, easy, goof-proof, and delicious. Just add water or milk, cook, and serve. And of course, you'll find all the soup bowls, soups, ladles, and storage containers you'll ever need, and soups on sale at Johnny's. Right up and down the J. River Johnny's Express, Winchester Avenue, Martinsburg.
We're caught in a trap. This is that's an appropriate song for what we're getting into next. I think Tom's on the line.
Yeah, I'm here, Mike. And Matt.
How you doing today, Tom?
Good. Hope you guys are doing good.
Well, I think state of West Virginia feels like they're caught in a trap right now.
Yeah, I got a question, Mike. I'm not running for office again in 2020, but I did have 2 years in the legislature, and the thing that I always loved about West Virginia was it's a part-time legislature, which I always felt that was good because you had people that in the legislature that had a feel out there in private industry and what have you. But I'm not so sure now with the way the governor has gone about declaring this emergency. Just to give you some background, at least I was never given any kind of input or allowed to provide any input to the governor as to whether we would declare a state of emergency. He just basically did it in and on himself. Of course, we weren't in session, and now we find out, the only way we can come into session is for the governor to call an extraordinary session, or we have to have 3/5 of the legislature to force them to come into session, which we don't have the votes to do that. But to get to the point was, as governor, Mike, how do you see how the governor should proceed with the legislature in declaring a state of emergency, or in the case state of preparedness, what he should do, and get some of your feelings as to what the governor can do in a state of emergency, and how he should keep himself from doing things that are basically unconstitutional, taking property rights, closing private businesses and things. But I'll just leave it there and see what you have.
Well, first of all, I don't think one size fits all for the 55 counties. That's the first thing. And from Chapter 15, sad to say, and we both have talked about this now. I looked at it, when this all started, we started going down this path, and it gives very broad authority to the executive. Now, some of those, there's some gray areas, and quite frankly, you might see lawsuits when this is all said and done, because I do believe it's a taking without property rights, without due compensation. You can't tell somebody that's got a small business that's perfect example, restaurant / that sells just any kind of business. But I think the restaurants have been really hurt bad, and of course some of these private campgrounds that they've went after. You can't tell them they can't take in business but not compensate them. I think it's a property right. And now I don't know if there's any case law behind that. I think there's a problem there. Now, to relay that or compare this to what President Trump has done, with the exception of closing down flights, which of course I was directly affected by that. My work is mainly flying to Europe, which it's totally within his purview to limit people coming in and out of the country based on our national security or health or whatever it may be. It's within his purview. But this is the misconception that Trump shut it all down. Well, he didn't. It was the governors. And quite frankly, the governors were trying to one-upmanship each other to see who could be more draconian in the measures. Look at what was it? I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but the governor, the new governor in Kentucky, basically had law enforcement. You weren't allowed to even do the church services in the parking lot. Right. They were out taking people's drivers, there's tag numbers, and giving citations to some of them. And I just think that's ridiculous. And as a matter of fact, there's been several judges that have already ruled and said they couldn't do that. I think, and we had this conversation when I called to see if you wanted to come on, I think that the legislature is going to have to take a really hard look at Chapter 15 and tighten it up. And it might be tightened up through a court case. All it takes is one person to challenge what he's done. I don't know if anybody's got the intestinal fortitude to do it, because we've got this herd mentality right now that we have to give up our rights to fight a virus that so far has not, and the numbers have come down greatly. The original, what was that place in England that originally Imperial College estimated that guy, I think his name was Ferguson.
Yes.
Estimated that there were going to be 2.2 million deaths in the U.S. and 500,000 in England, in the UK. And those numbers are now down to, at least in the UK, it went from 500,000 to 20,000. And he even said, and when he said that in his testimony in front of Parliament, I think that he said 10,000 of those people would probably die in the next year anyway, just because, as we all know, this is very, very, if you're old and you have other morbidity issues with either you're overweight, or you have diabetes, or you have cardiac issues, you're more susceptible to not having a good outcome and passing away from the complications of it. So I think they've went way off the board, and this is the thing that I'm concerned about. In general, in the media, you're only getting one side of the scientific argument. There are doctors, medical professors, Two are actually from Stanford University Medical School. The one guy is actually started. This is what I forgot to mention yesterday. They started doing these serology tests, which is the only way you can find out who's actually had, because all they're testing right now, it's what they call sample bias. So they're only testing the people that show symptoms, and even those people a lot of times are testing negative. I mean, in the case of West Virginia, it's over 95% of them are testing negative that are eligible for the test. But that causes sample bias, and which lowers the number on the denominator, which drives up the mortality rate. And the one Stanford professor that was in charge of he was a director, medical doctor, that was in charge of the metadata group out at Stanford University Medical School, thinks that they've overestimated the on the high end it would be as bad as a real bad flu year. But all that stuff is kind of irrelevant to the argument that we shouldn't give up our constitutional rights for some chance of a little safety. That's just a short version of a longer quote. I believe it was Ben Franklin. You probably know it off the top of your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone who give up an essential liberty for a little bit of safety deserves neither liberty nor safety.
Yeah, and the things that I would do different. First of all, it should be, we always talk about in the legislature giving more local control. And I think that we should have never shut schools down statewide to start with. I think the prudent thing to do would have been to allow the local schools to do what, the county school systems to decide for themselves. There have been actually many countries that have actually have kept their schools open, but they followed, don't get me wrong, they followed good scientific things as far as some of the countries would check students every day for temperatures. If they had a temperature and some of the symptoms, they sent the whole class home for a 2-week quarantine. Before we even got our first case in West Virginia, I said at the time that one of the counties that had the first would end up having the first positive was probably going to be in the Eastern Panhandle. Of course, it was. It was in Jefferson County, and then Berkeley wasn't too far behind. And it might have been good for Berkeley and Jefferson, but it should have been up to the boards of education and the superintendents to shut their school systems down for a period of time. I think we're really, and this is something you've probably read some stuff on. I talked about it yesterday, and I've got an article on it for after you and I finish. Probably I'm going to discuss a little bit. But we're teetering very close to having a food supply issue with our food chain of getting the food to market. We have slaughterhouses shutting down all over the country, and compared to what we had 50 years ago, there are a lot fewer. Everything's more condensed as far as big companies, big operations. One, for instance, I think they slaughtered literally almost 2,000 steers a day, cattle a day, and that's shut down. JBS is one of them, which is JBS, if you don't know, is actually owned by a Brazilian company. It was an American company bought by a Brazilian company. JBS has bought a bunch of the big food conglomerate processors in the U.S. As far as the budget, what do you think about, have you heard anything about coming in for a budget session? Because they're going to have to do something with the budget. And if they take money out of the rainy day fund, the legislature has to take action for them to do that.
I'm aware that they will. I haven't heard anything specifically about whether a special session is going to be called, if and when. Now, I know we were supposed to meet the end of June. Actually, we're going to meet the end of May, but I'm not sure if that's going to go up for interim, so we haven't heard yet. But, yeah, I'm very curious as how the governor is going to handle the $500 million shortfall that he's predicting right now. And I know he's counting a lot of money coming in on federal dollars, which I'm not as optimistic as he seems to be of the federal dollars, and if he's going to be able to spend them the way he wants to spend them. I'm not so. As you know, anytime federal dollars are come in, there's always strings attached to how you can spend them, and generally you have to have state dollars to match the federal dollars. So I'm not quite sure that West Virginia is going to get a good share of those federal dollars, given that we've got such a small number of cases. I think I checked the COVID board earlier today. We had 600 and some odd confirmed cases and 9 deaths, and I don't know how much of a federal influx of funds we'll get.
Well, my understanding, and this is reported on a couple news outlets today, the minimum was supposed to be $1.25 billion, and now I think they say West Virginia's share is going to be $1.625 billion. But as you said, I don't know if it's so much strings attached, but there's obviously, it's not clear in the law.
Mm-hmm.
And the National Governors Association is asking to be able to use this to backfill the budget of the various states. And if it's not in the law, I mean, it supposedly is in the law that it's only supposed to be used for COVID, the coronavirus related expenses. So I don't know how they define that. That would be the interesting. Matter of fact, I might need to take a look under the definition section of the CARES Act, which is an 880 some page bill, by the way, Matt, of which probably 95% of the congressmen and U.S. senators didn't read because there's some very problematic language in that bill and problematic spending too. I mean, we're basically, the one thing that concerns me, if they do let them use that to backfill the state budgets around the country, now you've went from, like in the state of West Virginia, as you well know, constitutionally we have to have a balanced budget. And you normally do that with state revenues. But if they allow our state to backfill the general revenue budget with federal dollars, now you're getting into a quagmire where basically the U.S. government is monetizing the debt through the Federal Reserve deficit spending. And now they're doing it, if they do allow that, now the Federal Reserve is monetizing deficit spending at the state level too.
State level.
Which would be historic. And I don't know if you know this, but the original Federal Reserve Act only allowed the Federal Reserve to buy commercial paper. Originally they were not allowed to buy government bonds. And then later, I don't know, it was 10 or 20 years after, they amended the Federal Reserve Act to allow for the Fed to buy government bonds, and that's when we started monetizing the debt, and that's why we've got probably, when it's all said and done this fiscal year, I'm guessing it's going to be close to a $24 trillion deficit. So, the biggest thing I would do different as far as the budget, and this is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did the numbers on a piece of paper the other day, because they had, I don't know if you listened to Hardy and Mukow on the One Talk show, but they were on talking about the budget deficit, and they mentioned how much money was available in the rainy day fund. And if you're not aware, you need a 15% rainy day fund of relative to your overall general revenue budget to keep the bond rating agencies happy.
Mm-hmm.
Which under the numbers that they gave, you can only take out about $186 million to stay above that 15% threshold. And of the $500 million projected deficit they have now, $300 is because of the tax filing deadline being moved. And one of the things I think I would have done a little differently is, Trump moved that tax deadline to July 15th, but that didn't affect the federal budget because the federal fiscal year ends, I think it's September, or is it October?
September 30th.
September 30th.
October 1st.
Yeah, October 1st. September 30th to October 1st. But the state budget, finishes June 30th. So I think it would have been more prudent and caused a lot less heartache to have changed that tax filing deadline to say June 15th. That still give people 2 more, April to May, May to June, 2 more months. And then it wouldn't have affected our state budget near as much. And all you'd be dealing with is the $200 million shortfall from the lack of economic activity.
Yeah.
And I don't know did you hear Rodney calling a little while ago?
No, I missed that earlier on.
Well, Rodney called in and asked about how it's going to affect road work. And Rodney,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the problem, and they're not talking about this, and we don't know what the numbers are, but this is going to be interesting to see. With all the lack of economic activity, the high unemployment, fewer people are on the road, which means the road fund is going to be drastically hit 2 for several months, which means less money going in there to fix the potholes, to fix the slips, to do the road work. But yet we still have to pay those interest payments on the bonds. So the money has to first go to pay the interest payments on the bonds, which means a lot less money will be available for the road work, the general maintenance. And we're getting into literally the peak season for working on roads. So I think a lot of this stuff in general, the governor has not thought through very seriously, and he didn't do it strategically and what I would call surgically for the state. I mean, you know, I've been all over the state in the last since February of last year. I've been to every county at least once, some of them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And what works in McDowell County and what works in Boone County and what works in Mercer County and what works in Pocahontas County is not necessarily what the Panhandle needs. Now, in other words, over here we needed to take a little bit more, at least from I think it's a societal community position that people have to have free will and use personal responsibility to take care of themselves. It's not the government's responsibility. That being said, if you tell people this is what, and you're very transparent about it up front, and that's where I think there's a problem with both at the state and the federal level. They're not being transparent. In other countries that have been successful in not having a lot of cases, they've told people up front what they need to do. For instance, a perfect example is early on they said, masks don't do a thing, right? Isn't that what they said, Matt? Masks don't help at all. But yet all these other countries were using masks and they didn't have any problem, not near as many cases that we're having. And then they came back later and said, oh, well, maybe masks will work. I think they knew all along masks would work. And
yeah, I think, and there are a lot of people too that knew those modeling numbers were always way off. I spent 20 years in chem biodefense at the Pentagon, and we did an exercise called Dark Winter right before 9/11. It was a smallpox outbreak. We got into 3 days, and we ended up getting the same scenarios. We were, shutting down the economy and things like this. But those numbers, those predictions were way off because people don't act the way the models say they're going to act. And the herd immunity is what we're missing in this particular issue, I see, because we're isolating healthy people. You need the healthy part of your population out there working, and I think we've given basically everything over to the epidemiologists, and we should have had a more broad all government approach and taken a look and asking the hard question. These epidemiologists, give us some specifics on these models, because when you go from 2 million deaths down to 250,000, down to 100,000, now we're down to 60,000. I mean, these numbers were way, way off, and nobody seemed like we were just listening to the epidemiologists and at our peril. And now here we are, 30 days into it, and we've shut down the economy.
Well, and the other thing that they're saying in this, and I'm going to mention this now because we got about 4 minutes, and that's it. This has flown by. But so I texted a doctor friend of mine who works at a medical school, a major university medical school. I'll just say that. And I tested him this question. I said, COVID-19 is from the same family of viruses as the common cold. And they've put all their apples into this. We're going to find this vaccine that's going to save us, right? So we just need to flatten the curve and extend this until we get a vaccine that will save us. So I texted this question to him. I said, COVID-19 is from the same family of viruses as the common cold. So what makes them think they can make a vaccine for it when they haven't been able to make one for the common cold? So his response I got a little while at 3:24, part of the way in the show, he texted me back. By the way, this is a SARS virus. It's just a mutation of the SARS that caused SARS before. With the vaccine, and here's what he says: with the vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, they will be targeting a particular virus, not the whole family of coronaviruses. That said, they were unable to make a safe SARS vaccine. Vaccinologists with more wisdom and experience are cautioning against rushing to make a vaccine for COVID-19. So I think the idea that we're just going to, just like the flu vaccine, there you go. So you're supposed to put that thing on mute. So just like the flu vaccine, even in a good year, the flu vaccine is only 50% effective. So I think telling the populace, people out there, that we're going to make a vaccine is a dangerous proposition when the reality is, as this doctor just said in his text back to me, that they couldn't even get a safe vaccine for SARS. So I think, and you hit the nail on the head about not letting the healthy population go about their business, because letting them go about their business and building up natural herd immunity is a better way, and protecting and doing like what a lot of other countries have done, use personal responsibility to allow the people that are susceptible to negative outcomes with this virus and have them stay. And I've been saying it every day. What's the last thing I say on the show? Take care of your older neighbors, stay in, be safe, especially if you have a compromised immune system.
Exactly.
And well, with that, we're about literally 1 minute or so away. Thanks for calling in, Tom, today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike. You take care. Take care, Matt. You guys have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. And you got another call, or is that somebody else?
No, we are down to about 1.5 minutes left in the program. You do have a couple of questions, though, you're going to have to look at on your YouTube page so you can try to address those tomorrow.
Okay, so we got some questions. Those people that put out questions, hopefully my wife, if she's listening, is now printing out those questions for me, and we'll try to address them tomorrow. I think it's been we didn't run out of stuff to talk about today. That's for
Not
sure.
at all.
If you have any questions at all, please, you can send them to my email, mcfolk34@gmail.com. You can also put it on that YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
I got a YouTube video today. If you're watching this tape delayed and you have a question, you can still put the comment down there on the video, and I'll try to answer it tomorrow. Have a safe evening. Enjoy the weather. Get out, because, by the way, ultraviolet light does. And this is straight from my buddy who has a PhD in genetics, studied viruses for 6 years at Dietrich. Ultraviolet light kills the virus. So get out and enjoy the sun, and you'll be better for it.
I stand at the edge of the pages of history and lessons